Hi, my name is Maria Fernanda, and I'm a volunteer organizer with Cosecha. And I am going to talk to you today about how to be a dynamic trainer. What are some tips to be able to ensure that folks are paying attention, that people are learning, and they're having a good time during your Cosecha training? So the function or purpose of this presentation is it's for you as a trainer to understand the two parts, which is facilitation and teaching. So here in Cosecha, we think that in order to be a good or a dynamic trainer, you need to be able to hold both the facilitation and teaching skills, because we think that they're both complementary to each other. We want to ask you the question. So what do you think happens if a trainer only teaches? Or what do you think happens if a trainer only facilitates? If we do teaching only, if we're only dictating the knowledge and we're not allowing for people to share theirs, what's happened is that we're not going to pull learning from the group. Even if people are new to Cosecha, they might have organized before in actions or events. It could be anything from event planning to actions and organizing. And so people already have some knowledge. Even though it might not be to Cosecha specifically, they already have learnings that they can bring to the group. So if you're only teaching and not facilitating, you're not going to be able to pull that learning from the group. And the other thing that happens if you're only teaching, then it's not interactive. People can get bored. Sometimes people feel bad if they feel like they already knew the material and they weren't asked if they didn't know it already. People feel bad if they knew the material and they weren't asked if they knew it already. So we don't do teaching only because we want to pull learning from the group and we want it to be interactive. But we also don't want it to be facilitation only. The reality is that Cosecha, people have been taking over a year learning about social movements, thinking about our 4 phases, thinking about specific ways to organize. And if we only do facilitation, sometimes the people in the room won't have some of those skills, so we cannot bring new knowledge into the room. So we want to, in Cosecha, not only teach, in Cosecha, we don't want to only facilitate, because we want to be able to bring new knowledge into the room. We believe that all of these new skills are a craft and that some people have been able to work on it longer. And we want them to be able to give that knowledge to the rest of the group, which cannot be done through facilitation only. So we together are going to explore what are the 3 parts of teaching and what are the 3 parts of facilitating. And the 3 parts that are important in order to learn how to teach as part of a trainer are vulnerability through our stories, our metaphors, and our self-confidence. For vulnerabilities through our story. So we, in Cosecha, before we share a module, we want you to share a vulnerable story of more than 4 or 5 minutes about who you are. And the reason we do that is because it is in the pain of the challenges and our choices that people get to know you at a deeper level. One of Cosecha's principles is that we're all a family, and we want, and that the hive meets all of its bees. And in order for people to be able to build a good relationship with each other, they need to know your vulnerability. And one way to share it is through the stories. We're not asking you to share a sad story so people feel bad for you. We're asking you to share a vulnerable story of an experience. It doesn't have to be organizing. It could be personal life, so that the audience can connect with you and they will be more open to learn the skills that you're giving them. The second piece of being a good trainer that teaches is metaphors. Metaphors allow us to connect the audience to something they already know with something new that we're teaching them. A good example is, for example, our Cosecha structure. If you have already gone through a structure of, our circles and villages and the roles, it can be complex because it's the first time that a lot of us are doing decentralized structures. So a metaphor that we like to use are quinceañeras, or sweet 16s. But, when we do quinceañeras, we usually have fundraising, for example. If the family needs support, in order to throw the quinceañera, they will ask for madrinos or padrinas. I don't know how to translate that. Sponsors from community members that will like sponsor the dress. They will sponsor the shoes. They will sponsor the invitations. They will sponsor the DJ. So, that same value that we hold in Cosecha of that we believe everything we need is already in the community, and how we do our fundraising circles, those are already used in the quinceañera. The other thing is in the quinceañera, everybody has a role, right? You have the person that's leading the cooking. There's always like a cousin or an uncle or an aunt or an uncle that does the choreography for the dance. There's somebody that's the main contact with the pastor. So everybody has a role, just like in the Cosecha structure. So of course, there's a lot more metaphors that you can use, but every time you're about to teach your audience something new, think of a metaphor or some experience that they already have that they can connect with it. And the last but not least is self-confidence. I want to start by telling you that you have something to teach. Whether you've been organizing for 3 months or 5 years, our experiences give us the right to be able to teach, of course, in a respectful manner. We're not saying that we're better than the audience because we know more, or that we should tell them what to do because we know more than them. We're just saying that because you have experience in Cosecha and you've done these modules and your life experiences, you have something to teach, and you need to be able to own that in order to be a good trainer. And we also need to know when it's okay to give advice. So as a trainer, people might ask you questions and you can facilitate an answer from them, and you should also feel comfortable sharing a piece of advice. A tip that I have for the pre-training jitters, I heard this in a TED Talk. Before a training, go to a room on your own, a bathroom, a side room, or maybe be with somebody that you trust, and just like stretch out as much as possible so that your body takes up a lot of space, and that sometimes can help with the pre-training jitters. But yeah, just to make sure to take a second before jumping in, take breaths, don't speak too fast. I do that a lot. There's, especially in Cosecha, there's usually somebody translating after you, so ensure you take enough pauses for people to be able to translate. But yeah, it's all about self-confidence and your approach and in your body language. But we want self-confidence with respect. It's self-confidence, acknowledging that you have knowledge to give, but also knowing how to be respectful about it, and not make people feel like they don't know something. So those are the 3 steps, the 3 parts of teaching. We want vulnerability through your story, we want metaphors, and we want self-confidence. And now let's go through the 3 parts of being a facilitator. There's, just like in teaching, there's 3. For facilitation are state change. How do you change people's state or their mood? If they're really happy and you need them to be serious, if they're sad and you want to hype them up, what are the different state changes that you can use as a good facilitator? The second part of it's clarification, being able to clarify the needs and the questions of the room. And the last one is the room focus, how to focus it on the issue at hand. And just like in everything else, there are 3 ways to change the state of your audience. One of them is through their physiology. If people are falling asleep, if they're bored, if they're not being engaged, something you can do is change their state through their bodies. Ask them to stand up. If people are falling asleep, ask them to stand up and just stretch. Just the blood flow will help them wake up. If people are nervous or anxious, maybe ask them to high five their neighbor. Just get them out of their head and into their body. You can also ask them to change seats. The people on the left of the room go to the other side. The people on the right go to the other side. If you're comfortable with it, ask them to hug their neighbors. That just gets the room to be comfortable with each other a lot faster. High fives. Sometimes we do like massage circles, whatever it is to get people out of their head and into their body. It's a good way to change their state. Another way is through, let's do language. Sometimes we ask for help for people to finish our sentence, like, oh, what is that one word? And if you're asking the audience, they will pay attention to you by saying it back. You can also ask them to repeat with you. It's like, oh, can we say cosecha, cosecha? Or can we say that's messed up, that's messed up? Or you can just ask them for 5 minutes to pair up with their neighbor and talk about what they have learned. So just allow them to be able to speak up and share their ideas. And so you can change them so you can change their state. Also, maybe asking them to say the name of the person that they're fighting for in cosecha, or asking them to say how different their lives would be if cosecha happened. So just get people to say something can really change their state. And their last thing is focus. By focus, it means you can ask them to focus on something on the room, or you can ask them to focus on themselves. If you want the room to feel gratitude, an exercise we do is we ask them to close their eyes and put their hands over their heart and just feel the beating, and just say thank you. Thank the heart for all the work that they have to do to keep your body healthy. Thank your lungs. Thank your stomach. Thank your brain. Thank just everything that allows you to be there, because we're all really busy. And that can really slow down the room and make people feel grateful. If you need them to focus on something that makes them angry, you can think about it. Think of a time that somebody disrespected you. Think of a time that you saw something unfair happen, and you get people in that state. Or maybe you need them to be happy. Ask them to close their eyes and think of the happiest moment in the last month. Who were you with? If you want them to think about what's at stake, think of who you're fighting for, and think how their life would be different with cosecha. And you can just ask them to close their eyes and focus on those different things, and you will change their state. If people weren't focused, or maybe they needed to be a lot more engaged in the strategy session, ask them to close their eyes, ask them to think of something, and that will change their state. So those are the 3 things you can do. I will say, as a first-time trainer, it can be really difficult to think of what you need to train, plus be aware of the state of the room, plus think of what tool you want to use to change. So an advice I have for you is just try one of the 3. Think of language. Maybe in your next training, if you feel that you need to change the state of the room, just use language to change it. And then at the next training, try physiology, and then try focus, and then bring them all together. So you can start experimenting little by little. And maybe just use one out of the 3 tools on both teaching and facilitation. Just add a little bit to your toolbox the more you get into training. And the second step for being a facilitator is clarification. We need to practice really deep listening. We need to be able to understand as trainers what are the needs and the questions in the room. And the reason we say clarification is because I would say over 50% of the time when people ask you a question or give you a need that they have, they just need to be heard, because sometimes we're in communities where we're not, where we say something and people dismiss us because we're undocumented, because we're immigrants, because we're women. So as trainers, just listening to folks, let them finish their sentence before you speak up, can be really helpful. And it also allows you to really analyze what the actual question or the need is. And a good thing to do is, if somebody asks you a question about the training, maybe they don't understand why you're teaching something, repeat back the question just to ensure that you're understanding. All of the miscommunications are about language. Sometimes we use different language, so you want to repeat back what you understood and wait for confirmation. If what you said is right, they will affirm you. If what you said was not, then they'll do it. They'll say it again and then try again. So yeah, that's a big step. That's a big step on being a good facilitator, just being able to clarify people's questions or needs and deep listening. And the last slide I have for you, it's about room focus. Do not let go of the room. Sometimes you could have 3 or 4 people in one module that keep asking specific questions that are derailing you from the purpose of your module. Maybe you're trying to talk about the 4 pillars, about the pillars of Cosecha, about non-cooperation, and you have a couple of people that keep talking about racism or about something else that is important, but it's not part of your module. So do not let go of the room. Acknowledge people's questions and comments, but you should feel confident in saying that, you know, right now we're not talking about that, but that is an important issue. Let's look for a time where we can add it or talk about it later, but this is not the time. And, you know, as a trainer, this is something that's really hard to do, but it's really important because you're time bound and you have a schedule to follow. So you can't let a couple of people try to derail the purpose of your module. But within this, I will also say we have to be flexible. Excuse me. If you notice that the majority of the room is trying to talk about something else, maybe the room needs that. So as a facilitator, be flexible. And if you can, sometimes it takes some practice to be able to do this. But if you can, or if you feel like you're supported enough, go ahead and change the purpose. Just be explicit about it. Just be like, okay, it sounds like people want to talk about this. This is right. And then if you get the majority of the room to say yes, then be like, okay, then this is what we're going to do. But you are still holding the focus of the room. You switch the focus of the room, and now you're facilitating it. You're not allowing other people to do it. Of course, if there's a couple people that want to support you, go ahead. But again, as a trainer, you are holding the room and you are you're facilitating it through a new conversation. You're not just letting go of it. And that's the last thing I have. So, you know, as a facilitator, you want to be able to change state. You want to be able to clarify, and you want to be able to hold the focus of the room. And as a teacher, you want to be able to be vulnerable through your story. You want to use metaphors, and you want to have self-confidence. That's all we have. Feel free to read the one-pager, add your own tips. I know you have yours, and good luck in your training.